All right. And let me present and we will be good. All right. I think everyone's in now. Hello everyone and welcome to the November, I almost said October because it was supposed to be our October one, but our November 5 miles from anywhere meeting. Today we have the illustrious Anna Behrens, who will be giving us a talk on Jean Leckie and a bit on spiritualism. And so it's going to be a fantastic talk, and I'm glad you all could make it on this fall day. It is officially fall now, right? So there we are.
Oh
I
yeah.
guess it was in October too, but this is our first fall meeting. Um, all right. So for our agenda today, we'll do announcements as we always do, and then Anna will give her talk on Jean Leckie from Mistress to Medium. Love the title. And then we will have a little bit of discussion at the end, and I'll tell you a little bit about the December meeting. Uh, all right, there's another member joining us. All right, so announcements, a few things. First of all, and I'm so glad she was able to make it, but huge kudos to our own Margie Deck, who has a story in the latest issue of the Strand magazine, The Case of the Pensive Poet. And really, what an honor for her to have a story not only in the Strand magazine, which is an honor in and of itself, but that she has her story alongside that of G.K. Chesterton of Father Brown fame. So huge round of applause. If you have not been able to, if you haven't gotten the issue, I highly recommend it. Margie is a phenomenal author, and this is definitely well-deserved praise. So
Thank
Margie,
you very much.
congratulations. Yeah, well-deserved, well-deserved. Okay. So when I see you in New York, you'll have to sign my copy, okay?
Okay.
All right,
I'm not going to
excellent.
say no.
In
I'm
fact, I'm
still in
actually going to
shock a
get,
little bit. So, yes, thank you.
yes, I'm actually going to get my copy at the Mysterious Bookshop. So I'll have you sign it there, okay?
Okay. It's
Perfect.
a date. It's okay.
All right. Um, Also, during that, so BSI weekend is coming up. I didn't put a slide for it. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with it, but I did want to announce that the Parade Street Irregulars, we are going to have our second Luther Norris dinner. It's going to be Thursday, January 16th. It is officially, I got a couple of announcements, first time announcing this, but it's at the Grand Central Oyster Bar. That is official. Max McGee has confirmed it. It's going to be right after the BSI lecture, so about 8:30 on that Thursday. The meeting is open to all, and first time ever announcement, we will have a commemorative pin, PSI pin at this meeting. Regina Stinson, who does the Spode pins, has created one specifically for us. I'm not going to show it yet. I'll wait till the dinner. But it is available, and everybody, whether you are a PSI member, of just a friend in the area, everybody's welcome to attend the dinner. And I'll send out information about that at the end of the meeting when I do my follow-up email. Okay. But very, very excited. And if you are in New York for the BSI weekend or just in the New York area, we'd love to have you join us. So thank you. All right. So this is almost a little preview of what you're going to see from Anna today, but I did want to say that the Conjuring the Spirit World exhibit at the Peabody Essex Museum is incredible. I got to go, you can see the picture there, for my birthday on October 10th. And it shows the connection between spiritualism and magic. And even has a Sherlock Holmes connection. It was curated by my BSI classmate, George Schwartz, who's at the end of that picture there. And it was wonderful. I actually got to get, my little group there got a personal tour of the exhibit from George. And if you reach out to George, you're in the area, he might be able to do that for you. But I did want to let everybody know, if you are in the area, that next Saturday is a free day at the Peabody Essex Museum. So you could actually go see the exhibit for free if you're interested on Saturday. And it'll be November 9th. So both Halloween will be over, which will be good because Salem was insane for Halloween. We were there October 10th and we got to the museum suddenly, like you couldn't move. Like it was just people everywhere. But that should be done. The election will be over in America. Everything should be a little calmer. And so it might be a really nice outing to go down there and probably still see a little bit of the fall foliage too, because it is south. It's in Massachusetts, so beautiful area, and that exhibit is incredible. But I'm not going to say too much more about it because Anna, I'm sure, will touch on a lot of the same topics in her talk. Last announcement, I believe, yes. If you have the latest issue of the Canadian Homes, it has two of our members here in it. Steve, I don't think is here today, but Steve has an article called "What Do I Get for Landing on Free Parking?" It's a really fun article that Steve Mason wrote. He argues for alternative rules to play the game, the Sherlockian game. He has a few rules of his own he adds in, and he's saying like the way we play Monopoly with alternative rules, we should also be able to play the game with alternative rules. It's a fun article. And then I've got an article as well on Baritsu, and I argue that Baritsu is not a misspelling of Barititsu. I actually translate it from the Japanese, and it stands for the law of the place if you translate it, and I explain why that actually would translate into the Sherlock Holmes version of martial arts. So if any of you guys get a chance to read it, both the articles, well, hopefully you like mine too, but Steve's is quite fun. I really enjoyed Steve Mason's, and I'll make sure I let him know that. All right, now let me pause for a second because often we have some announcements. So if you have an announcement and would like to either unmute, make your announcement, or raise your hand using the raise hand feature because I can't see everybody, that would be great. And you can make an announcement. So I'll just pause if there's any announcements. Shayna.
Just wanted to remind you of some upcoming ASH events. As usual, the first Wednesday of the month is the ASH Wednesday dinner. I believe we're having that at the Joyce this month. Jen and I tend to trade off, so Jen's actually making the arrangements this month. So you can email her at ashdinners@gmail.com if you want to be added to the list. Also coming up is the ASH Autumn Meeting, the luncheon. That's at Tony DiNapoli's on 3rd Avenue again. And that is on Sunday the 10th. And thank you to everyone who's already made their reservation for the Gillette luncheon during the BSI weekend. If you have not already received your confirmation either through the app you used to pay or via email, if you send a check, that should be coming soon.
Excellent. And the ASH brunch is also coming up, correct? That's the Sunday of the BSI weekend?
Correct, but I'm not involved in running that, so I don't
know. All right. You got your hands full already. Yeah. Excellent. Well, we had a question. What does ASH stand for? You want to answer that?
ASH is for the Adventuresses of Sherlock Holmes.
Excellent. There's a very, very rich history of it, of that particular organization, and maybe someday you could give us a little talk on that. That might be fun.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. Any other announcements? All right. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen for a minute, just for 1 second. And then because I really want to make sure, hold up. Wait a minute. Something just went wrong. Give me 1 second because somehow I lost my slideshow. How odd. Whoops. All right, I'm going to try this one more time. Apparently, when I was in slideshow mode, Zoom wasn't reading it. But now I took it out, and it looks like it is. So that was just kind of, never had that happen before. So, yes, now I found it. Excellent. Okay. And there we are. All right. And there is our illustrious Anna. So, Anna Behrens is a speech language pathologist and leader of the Monadnock Sherlockian Scion in Keene, New Hampshire. She publishes her late husband Richard's Lizzie Borden, Girl Detective Mysteries, under her imprint Nine Muses Books at lizziebordengirldetective.com. Now, I'll send that link out when we're done. And she is the producer of the Lizzie Borden podcast. She is also a member of the Sherlock Holmes Club of the Upper Valley, as well as many other BSI Scions via Zoom, including the Arthur Conan Doyle Society. She serves as secretary, Percy Phelps is her title, of the Beacon Society, and serves on the board of the International Scion 5 Miles from Anywhere. I think we've all heard of that one. In January 2023, she was awarded the Susan Z. Diamond Award in recognition for introducing young people to Sherlock Holmes. In addition to writing many essays related to Sherlock Holmes and Arthur Conan Doyle, Anna is the writer of the Monadnock Sherlockian Facebook blog and can be reached at monadnocksherlockian@gmail.com. So big round of virtual applause for Anna. And I will make sure everyone's on mute. And Anna, you should at this point be able to share your screen.
Okay, thank you.
We got it.
Yeah, okay,
Excellent. Looks great. Oh, perfect.
okay. So let me just go away. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for waiting a month. I had no voice a month ago, and I'm still coughing now, but hopefully I can make it through. I just wanted to say something else about that wonderful exhibit at the Peabody Essex. Um, George Swartz did a fantastic job. It's so interesting, multimedia. There's everything in it, and there's even some original Arthur Conan Doyle things. It's just not to be missed if you're anywhere near Salem, Massachusetts. I strongly recommend that you attend. Um, there's also an accompanying book if you're not able to get there. The book's available on Amazon now. Um, and I was able to get George to come talk to us at the Lizzie Borden podcast. And episode 33 is an interview with him where he talks all about this exhibit, a little bit about Arthur Conan Doyle and his role in spiritualism. So, strongly recommend that too. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. So now we're here to talk about, I guess I should put this in slideshow mode. No, I'm not gonna do that now. Okay. We're here to talk about Miss Jean Leckie. She, as we know, was the second wife of Arthur Conan Doyle. Just a little bit about her. She was born into money. She received a good education. She happened to be strikingly attractive as well. She was an accomplished singer. She had a mezzo-soprano voice, a fine one apparently. She was trained throughout Europe. She loved riding horses. She enjoyed hunting. She was very well read. Some even describe her as an intellectual. She was described also as very ambitious and determined, but also that she was romantic and passionate. Her Scottish,
Hey, Anna, I
yeah,
just want to interrupt you for a second. If you click on the From Current Slide button on the Start Slideshow, because you haven't actually started the slideshow, we can still see it, but there you go.
okay. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Okay. I thought I hit that button, but I guess it didn't work.
No, now it's now you got the whole screen, so it looks great.
Perfect. Thank you. Um, so, oh, and so where am I? I don't think I'm at the right slide though. Let me go back here. There we go. Okay. So her Scottish ancestry includes folk hero Rob Roy McGregor. The Leckie family, her parents and four siblings, they lived in a wealthy London suburb called Blackheath. She was permitted to travel as a young woman to study singing abroad. Later, she moved in with two friends to London to pursue her singing career. She did have quite a strict father, but she seemed to be given quite a bit of freedom. She was even attended parties, including the one where she met her future husband, and we all know who that is. Okay. So, by all description, she was quite different from Louisa or Tui, as Conan Doyle called his first wife. Tui was much more quiet and reserved. Um, we know that Jean Leckie was determined. She set her sights on the most famous writer of the day. Um, and as a rising man of letters, Conan Doyle certainly would benefited from a wife who could entertain other famous writers and politicians. And certainly that's a role that Jean fulfilled later when they married. Um, so the married couple, they didn't live at Undershaw. They rather moved to Sussex, where Jean's parents had a home, and they purchased a home called Windlesham in Crowborough. Um, Here, Jean enjoyed entertaining. She often held house parties and enthralled Conan Doyle. Her guests found her very charming, and his estimation of her only grew. He was certainly besotted with her. Jean took charge. She certainly became mistress of the house. So much so that when Mary Louise and Kingsley, who were Conan Doyle's children from Toohey, they weren't really very welcomed at the house. They wanted to come home for Christmas, and she didn't really want them to, and Conan Doyle really didn't help the situation either. Kingsley was first sent to Eton and then to medical school, and Mary was just sent abroad to study music, but she really didn't even want to do that, but they kind of made her do it. Um, so there is correspondence between Kingsley and Mary Louise that where they feel like it's all Jean's doing. They weren't really happy about it at all. Okay, so we get to the question, was Jean Leckie a mistress? Well, there's two definitions of mistress. The first one is a woman in a position of authority or control. And we know that she certainly fit that role when it came to being mistress of the house and kind of controlling in her marriage as well. And we'll talk about that more when we talk about her role as a medium. Um, Now, as far as the second definition goes, um, on one hand, I feel like it's not really our business to know whether they had an affair. Um, and if and reading a lot, and I read a lot of biographies of Conan Doyle, Daniel Stashower, John Dixon Carr, Andrew Lycett, they all say absolutely their relationship was platonic. It meant so much to Doyle to be honorable. He would not do that to his wife Tui. But another biographer, Russell Miller, he says, "Oh yeah, they were definitely lovers." And he said so much so that his mother, Conan Doyle's mother, would set up discreet rendezvous locations for them. So who knows where the truth really is, but I don't know that it really matters one way or the other. I think theirs was a very difficult situation here where there were people in love. They couldn't really be together. They didn't want to have any sort of scandal. They didn't want to hurt Tui. They didn't want to hurt Jean's reputation. So it was a tough situation. Recently, I was listening to Doings of Doyle podcast, episode 54, where they were talking about the second stain. And Mark Jones was saying that the largest number of pages written by someone other than Conan Doyle, and what I mean by that is dictated pages, um, was in the story of the second stain in the original manuscript. And the person who wrote it was Jean Leckie. And this occurred in a hotel room, and this was 2 years before Tui's death. So, you know, they're in a hotel room together doing this. So it suggests that maybe there was something more going on. But like I said, we don't really know. Um, we know that Conan Doyle brought back Sherlock Holmes in The Hound of the Baskervilles, but that story took place 2 years before he went over the falls. But in 1903, he wrote The Empty House, where he truly did bring back Holmes, and he credits the plot for that story to Jean. He said she gave him the idea. So we know that she was a confidant for him, and he would clearly discuss his writings with her, and he took her ideas to heart. For you chronologists, I tried to put together a timeline. Um, so we know Jean Leckie is born March 14th, 1874. Arthur Conan Doyle is about 15 years old at this point. In 1885, Conan Doyle marries Louisa Toohey Hawkins, and Jean Leckie is 11 years old when they marry. In 1889, Mary Louise is born. 1892, Kingsley's born. 1893, Toohey's diagnosed with tuberculosis. This kind of surprised me in my research. It was only 1 year after she gave birth, so her children were quite young. Kingsley's only 1, Mary Louise is 4. She was only given, quite a short time to live. But Arthur Conan Doyle is often credited with taking such good care of her, like he took her to Switzerland and built Undershaw in a place in England that's supposed to have better air quality. So he really is credited with helping her to live much longer. She didn't die until 1906. So in 1894, Jean meets Arthur Conan Doyle at a party. Maybe it could have been a party for her. I don't know. Her birthday was the previous day, but she's 24. He's 38, of course, and married. We know this is 4 years after Toohey's diagnosis, and she's quite ill with tuberculosis. So Jean and Arthur have an instant and mutual attraction. From this day on, Conan Doyle would celebrate the anniversary of their meeting by delivering a single snowdrop flower to her. And he would do that every year. He privately admitted his love for Jean. He was very close with his mother. He took her into his confidence, but he always claimed rather vehemently that their relationship was platonic. He states that he remained honorable, and but he did keep it a secret from his wife. He didn't want to hurt his wife. He would say to his mother and to others, "I fight the devil and I win." And it just shows the inner conflict that he had. In 1906, Toohey tells her daughter that Arthur is, going to likely marry Jean Leckie after she dies, and then she does die that same year on July 4th at age 49. So the relationship that Arthur Conan Doyle and Jean Leckie have is essentially in secret, and it lasts for 10 years. Conan Doyle felt it wasn't really fair to keep Jean kind of on the hook for all that time, but she was not going to let him go any more than he would divorce his wife. So they just had to endure the situation. He clearly was besotted with her, and that and that never changed. So Arthur Conan Doyle, as I said, brought his mother into his confidence, and his sister and even his daughter. They all meet Jean. They all like Jean very much. Eventually, Jean's parents meet Conan Doyle. They give him a very expensive gift for Christmas, kind of signifying their approval of the relationship. I mean, he was, rich, famous, and he was Scottish too, which didn't hurt, I'm sure. And I think there must have been speculation among Jean's family and friends as like, why wasn't she dating? Why didn't she marry? Because she she was of age, certainly, because she didn't really end up marrying until she was 33, which was much older than typically women would marry back then. So I just added these photos in. To the right, the top there is Mary Doyle. That is Arthur Conan Doyle's mother. He was very close with her. Below is the actor Doug Henshaw and Emily Blunt. And in The Strange Case of Sherlock Holmes and Arthur Conan Doyle, in that film, they portrayed Arthur Conan Doyle and Jean Leckie. And I just thought, wow, does Douglas Henshaw really looks like Mary Doyle there? I thought they looked so similar. It was great casting. But that's a very interesting movie. It's not exactly factual, but if you haven't seen it, I'd recommend it. If you can find it. It's hard to find. So Willie Hornung, he was Arthur Conan Doyle's friend, and he was also married to his sister Connie, so his brother-in-law as well. And he wrote the Raffles series of stories. Um, so Arthur Conan Doyle's playing in a cricket game in 1900. Jean's there watching him. So Willie shows up and sees them together. And Arthur thinks, well, I don't want him to get the wrong idea. So he goes to see Connie and Willie that evening, and he says, just so you know, it's just a platonic relationship. We're just friends. And but his sister Connie, she's very Catholic, and she just feels like this is not okay. And Willie doesn't think it's okay either. He says, you attach too much importance to whether these relations are platonic or not. I can't see that it makes much difference. What is the difference? So Arthur Conan Doyle gets quite angry and he says it's all the difference between innocence and guilt. So they have a bit of a falling out. They do make up later, and in fact, the Hornings attend the wedding of Jean and Arthur. Um, Now, this is kind of interesting in that Arthur Conan Doyle, his father was institutionalized and then died, and the family didn't have much money. So he largely supported his mother and siblings. So he was supporting Connie and Willie at this time. So that must have been especially awkward. Um, but I just like these sort of connections here in the picture. That's a picture of Willie Hornung there on the top left. Um, and to the right is a picture of the TV series Raffles, which is great fun if you've never seen it. I recommend it. So the actor Anthony Valentine, he played Raffles, and he's the one in the top hat. But later he would go on to play Baron von Gruner in the Granada TV series, the Sherlock Holmes series. So a lot of Sherlockian connection there. So there is a timeline of their courtship, at least in part. And this is thanks to Arthur's younger brother, Innes, who's pictured here. He kept a private journal, and he was there at the party where Jean and Arthur met. So Arthur and Jean couldn't really meet in private. So if they were meeting, they had to have other people there. So Innes was often invited, or other family members or friends. But we see here that in this timeline, which is on the ACD encyclopedia, um, how much Jean was invited to Undershaw. So she was there a lot, having tea, having dinner. Um, they went on a hunting trip with Sidney Paget. And this was quite interesting. In 1898, the Conan Doyles had a grand fancy dress ball. Um, Tui was feeling stronger, so she attended this party too, as did Jean Leckie. I don't know what Tui was dressed as, but Jean certainly had a disguise, so that must have been an interesting evening. So we see there's other occasions too where it was documented that they got together. I'm sure this isn't every time they were together, but this is the ones that we know of for sure. So during the long years where they couldn't really be together, Doyle's trying to distract himself. He starts taking up some of Jean's interests, like she's really involved in music. He's not really musical. He tries to learn the banjo, doesn't really have success there. He takes up hunting. He doesn't really like hunting. He's not big on riding horses either, but he starts doing those things because he knows she's really interested in them. And even some of his writing is a bit revealing. He calls the tragedy the Carrasco. The Carrasco is actually the name of one of his horses, and that's the horse that Jean would ride. And when she would come to visit Undershaw, and they would ride out together. It was the only time they really could be alone. Um, and then he wrote a story called A Duet with an Occasional Chorus. So there's the music connection there. And it's a love triangle. And a married man's former lover comes back into his life and tempts him to resume their affair. He struggles to remain steadfast, and obviously this is much like the struggle Conan Doyle himself had. So back to the timeline. So we know that Toohey dies 1906. About a year and a half later, 1907, Jean and Conan Doyle marry. They move to the Windlesham house that they bought in Sussex. At the time of their marriage, Arthur Conan Doyle's 48, Jean is 33. Toohey's children, Mary's 18, Kingsley's 15. Arthur Conan Doyle was knighted in 1902, as we know, so Jean is referred to as Lady Jean Conan Doyle to his Sir Arthur. So in 1909, they have their first child, Dennis. 1910, they have Adrian. 1912, they have Lena Jean. In 1914, Jean, who's really been a long time skeptic of spiritualism, she just was not a believer, but she suddenly becomes a believer after her brother was killed in World War I. So she begins her life as a medium because Arthur Conan Doyle was trying to convince her that she was a medium. He would often say, even when she didn't believe in spiritualism, that she would make a great medium, and he believed her to be one. So she, of course, became one. And she used automatic writing to speak to the dead family members and friends, and they raised their children with spiritualism as their religion. In 1918, Conan Doyle begins proselytizing. Up until this point, he really believed that there was scientific evidence and proof for spiritualism, but at this point, he just felt like you had to have faith. So he had a lot of loss as well around this time. His son Kingsley died, his brother Innes died. So they both suffered a lot of loss here. And that was common why people went to spiritualism, because they were trying to contact those who died. So a little bit of revising history here in Memories and Adventures, where Conan Doyle writes about marrying Jean Leckie. He said, on September 18th, 1907, I married Miss Jean Leckie, the younger daughter of a Blackheath family whom I had known for years and who was a dear friend of my mother and sister. Okay, well, we know that's not quite how it happened. I mean, they became friends after he's the one who met her first. So I think he was just trying to prevent any sort of scandal and to kind of say, well, this is the reason why I married so quickly after my wife died. It was somebody I already knew for a long time, but you know. So here's Arthur Conan Doyle pictured at Windlesham, at his house with his dog there in the foreground. So Jean Leckie, we know that once they got married, Conan Doyle was definitely more relaxed. He was less bound by convention. He was a public figure, well-known writer. He was very confident. And in the years followed his conversion to spiritualism, um, he was definitely well served by Jean Leckie. Um, but Jean Leckie is believed to have really spoiled her children, particularly her sons, Dennis and Adrian. Um, their daughter, Billy, she didn't really like to go on all these trips and everything. She just preferred to be in school. Um, and I think I had mentioned already that Mary Louise was kind of sent away to study, and she wasn't allowed to come home for Christmas, and her father really didn't help. And Kingsley also was not that welcome at the house. Um, so with them both embracing spiritualism, it allowed for even more closeness in their relationship and and frankly for Jean to take a little more control in their marriage. She had been doing the automatic writing for a long time, but then she later decided to use a spirit guide called Phineas. Now, first, the automatic writing is used with this planchette, and here's you can see in the top right, there's how the pencil fits in that little hole, and you guide it with your hand there, and whatever gets written by the pencil is the message, and that's kind of the precursor to the Ouija board we see there at the bottom right. So that she didn't use a planchette. She just wrote with a pencil in her hand. Um, Now, she really became a medium in her own right. She was recognized here. She was interviewed by the Brooklyn Daily Eagle in 1923. Um, about her role as a medium. And she describes that she doesn't enter a trance. She puts a cross. This is when she's still using the writing. She puts a cross at the top of the paper. Conan Doyle makes a prayer. And then she says, I soon feel a desire to write. I'm unconscious of what I'm writing, but I know it's a direct communication from the other side. I know that. So, and this is the reporter talking. In regard to childhood and old age, I said, Sir Arthur told me that while there was no such thing as time as we understand it, the apparent average age of the other side was about 35 years, that youth and old age adapted themselves to this apparent age. And she says, well, yes. And then he says, but, we often read a child or an old man appearing to a person. He says, how do you reconcile this? And she says, well, the spirits appear to the friends and relatives at the period of their lives where when they passed away, so they could recognize them. And then her message is really, they on the other side are ever anxious to communicate with us here. And she says, we can help one another in this sphere and in the higher sphere. She's they on the other side are ever anxious to communicate with us here, but we should aid them in that communication. From the earthly viewpoint, let me illustrate. There may be someone on your telephone wire who's anxious to talk to you, but if you have your receiver down, you cannot hear from them. Um, that is what we are apparently constantly doing in this world. And on the other side, they are trying to reach us. Um, so she said she has nothing to conceal. She hopes that spiritualism might be spread throughout the world. Again, this is Arthur Conan Doyle's message as he begins to proselytize. They believe it to be the true religion. Um, so in 1926, Arthur Conan Doyle publishes a notebook he was keeping. He called it Phineas Speaks. Now, Phineas is the spirit guide that Jean starts to use after she stops doing the automatic writing. And he was, she said, from Ur. And this was right around the time where the tomb of Tutankhamun was discovered, and it was in the news every day, in the newspapers. So anyway, her spirit guide happened to be from there as well. So um, Phineas was interesting. I read this book and I thought, hmm, it's it's clearly to me a manipulation. Like she is deciding all the things that she wants to happen or thinks should happen. And through Phineas, she's getting them to happen. Like, for example, she wanted to take the kids on a trip when they were going to Australia, but Arthur Conan Doyle said, no, we're not going to take the kids on this trip. And she says, well, let's ask Phineas. So Phineas says, well, yeah, you should take the kids on the trip. And of course they did. There's also things like Phineas saying, wasn't safe for Arthur Conan Doyle to take a certain train at a certain time. She calls the local station master and says, reschedule the train. And I guess when Mrs. Arthur Conan Doyle calls you, you do that. So they rescheduled the train. He took the train, but Phineas even says where to sit on that train, left or right or front or back. Um, so there's um, a lot of this going on. It's a very interesting read. If you get the opportunity to read this book, I would suggest it because it's it's just hard to know exactly what was happening there, whether she really just believed this or whether she was manipulating. I mean, I don't really know. At first, I had a really I really thought, well, she really wasn't treating him right. She was totally manipulating him. But after I did all my research, I kind of thought maybe that really wasn't the case. I think she didn't have much of a choice here. Her husband was heavily into spiritualism. She had the choice to just say, nope, I don't believe that, or join him. And by joining him, making their relationship closer, making herself more important in that relationship by becoming a medium. So I just also wanted to say that the messages she did receive from um, Conan Doyle's mother, who had passed away by this time, his son, his brother, Willie Horning, who also had passed away, they basically were very vague. They're just filled with pleasantries, how wonderful the spirit world is, how happy they are, how Conan Doyle was absolutely right, even though they kind of didn't believe it. Now they're believers. So these were all messages that supported what Conan Doyle believed. So Harry Houdini was friendly with Arthur Conan Doyle, and they met up when they were both in America. They were in Atlantic City, um, and Jean uh, is going to try and contact Houdini's mother, who had recently passed away and with whom he was very close. So they have a private seance. Um, Houdini's mother makes contact apparently through automatic writing. Conan Doyle thought Houdini was very moved. He hardly said anything. But then later, Houdini publicly announced that he didn't believe it. He just said, this is 15 pages of grammatical English. My mother didn't really speak English. She wouldn't have put a cross on the page. She was Jewish. She wouldn't have done that. Like, he just didn't think it was from her at all. So this caused a rift in their relationship. And then later, Houdini went on to denounce some mediums who Conan Doyle were convinced were genuine. So then at that point, their relationship ended. And the picture on the right here, lower right, is Houdini's in the center with Jean and Conan Doyle and their children. And being from New Jersey, I recognize in the background is the Atlantic City boardwalk. So Arthur Conan Doyle was ridiculed for his belief in fairies. This was the Cottingley fairies, and when he was writing a book for the Strand on spiritualism, he used these photographs as proof that the spirit world was real. Um, he interpreted the photos as clear and visible evidence of psychic phenomena. And by joining in and not only believing in spiritualism, but by becoming a medium herself, something Conan Doyle encouraged her to do. Jean gave Conan Doyle proof every day that spiritualism was real because she spoke to the dead on a daily basis. And I think that I could see how Jean wanted to support her husband who was being ridiculed for his beliefs. Um, at this time, photography was relatively new. Conan Doyle felt spirit photography was also proof of living spirits. And here are just some examples of some of that spirit photography. Um, we know that now that these were photographic tricks, um, where it was easy to smudge those white kind of smudge areas that sort of look like spirits. And here, his son Kingsley is clearly that same photograph is just double exposed behind him. And to the far right there, we see Mary Todd Lincoln. She was a big believer in spiritualism. And we see that there's that kind of ghostly image of Abraham Lincoln, excuse me, right behind her. Um, I won't spend too much time on this, but we know it's all fake. But back then, because it was a new technology, they just thought it was real. Um, so Arthur Conan Doyle spends much of the later years of his life proselytizing. He's still writing to earn money, but he's devoting a lot of that money toward spiritualism. Um, he's when he's out lecturing, he's having chest pains, but he continues to do it, realizing that it's his heart, but he does it anyway. And by the time he gets home, he has a massive heart attack. His last words to his wife are, "You are wonderful." He's buried on the property near his summer house where he did his writing. And as we'll talk about, he's later moved to a different cemetery. So the Royal Albert Hall is filled with mourners, with spiritualists. This is a picture on the bottom right. On the stage, um, Lady Jean is there with her son, and there's an empty chair that has the name of Arthur Conan Doyle on it. Um, and there is a spiritualist there who says that she saw Arthur Conan Doyle's spirit come and walk across the stage and take the chair. So on July 28th, 1930, so just a few weeks later, after this service, Lady Jean says, "Yeah, I established communication with Arthur through a spirit photograph." And here's one of the photographs here with we see that, which looks kind of comical now with the kind of cutout of Arthur Conan Doyle's head kind of stuck above them with a little smudge in between. Um, and she and her son Adrian, they attend a seance through a different medium, and they discuss family matters with Doyle. She consulted a medium every day after his death, and it's helped her rather in decision making about the estate and about the business. And even his son Dennis claims he's channeling his father when he wrote more Sherlock Holmes stories. And he continued to consult his mother as medium too. So Jean, in June 27th, 1940, about 10 years after Arthur dies, she dies. She's had cancer. She continues to believe in Conan Doyle's spirit existence until the day she dies. Her last moments include her crying out joyfully that she's seen those on the other side. Jean is buried alongside him in Crowborough. But after the children sell the property, their coffins are moved to a churchyard in Minstead near their country retreat in Bignell Wood, and that's pictured here above. Um, Now, when Arthur Conan Doyle died, um, when he was first buried, he was a devoted spiritualist, as we know, and spiritualists wanted to be buried in an upright position. So he's going to be closer to the light and standing to meet his departed loved ones. And I couldn't find any more information as to whether if they were still buried that way when when their coffins were moved or not. Um, but I thought that was really interesting. I had not heard that before. Um, so if we talk about her legacy, um, it's certainly without dispute that she made him ecstatically happy. He was just besotted with her since the day they met. Um, Now we know his legacy is somewhat marred by his dogged belief in spiritualism, and she was certainly complicit in that. So he had proof of life after death daily in his own home from his medium wife. So she certainly added to that belief. She may have felt she had no choice to adopt spiritualism and become a medium herself. It's hard to know. Um, she certainly wished to please her husband. Um, and she may have recognized a level of influence she would have as a medium, both within her marriage and within the spiritualism community. And through her role as medium, she clearly held a position of power in her marriage, unconsciously representing a movement of the time where spiritualism moved from a source of consolation for the bereaved to an ethereal engine of confidence for many women who practiced it. The message of self-worth and female independence missing in their mundane lives were found in the voices of the discarnate. And that I'm running over time here, but I just wanted to say one more thing about that. And that is that mediumship certainly brought a lot more power to women. And women weren't really allowed much out of the house, certainly not to work and earn money and speak in public. And suddenly they were all able to do this through their role as mediums. And women were considered to be better suited as mediums because they were more sensitive. Arthur Conan Doyle, he was helping reform marriage laws, but he didn't believe that women should have the right to vote. He thought, well, they're just going to vote the same as their husbands. And Jean was not really interested in voting either. Um, but she certainly had power in other ways. Um, while not all feminists were spiritualists, all spiritualists advocated for women's rights. So these were just some of the references I used. There's some fabulous books here, highly recommend. Um, so anyway, that's it. Thank you so much for listening. Appreciate it.
All right, and a huge round of applause for Anna. That was incredible. And we do have time. We got 5 minutes for a couple of questions. If anybody has one, I don't have a question. I do have a suggestion, Anna, and that is that there is no biography of Jean Leckie, and that would be a great project for you just to consider.
Well, I have
Right.
thought of that. Yeah, I'd have to travel a bit and get some primary resources. So
Yes.
yeah.
I see Lee and Walter have questions. So Lee, why don't you start us off?
Yes, I was wondering if you've read any of the stories by.
Oops. Sorry. I meant to lower your hand and I muted you, Lee. Could you unmute yourself? My apologies.
I I was wondering if you have read any of the Sherlock Holmes stories by Dennis Doyle, and if they're any good.
Yeah, that's a good
If
question.
if they show the earmarks of Doyle's writing.
That's a great question. I have not. So who has here? Maybe they can answer that question.
Are those the stories that he co-wrote with John Dixon Carr, or because I've read those and they're not bad.
They're not bad.
I think that was Adrian Conan Doyle, though.
Oh, I think you're right.
Yeah, that was what I was gonna say. That's Adrian. I don't recall Dennis's stories, to be honest, so I gotta look them up.
Yeah. Well,
The exploits of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or as we like to say, Sherlock Holmes exploited.
Well, maybe so.
All right, so we definitely have to follow up and find those stories by Dennis. Walter, you had a question?
I just wanted to make a quick comment. I have a book by Houdini, who talked to Conan Doyle after one of his illusions. And it was the illusion of moving an elephant through a brick wall. And you probably all heard this, but Houdini said, "Oh, no, this is an illusion. I can't tell you how it's done." But Conan Doyle insisted that Houdini actually had real magic And he was doing this with real magic. And Houdini kept saying, well, I can't tell you how I did it, but trust me, it's an illusion. And that was kind of how they would talk back and forth a little bit like that, I think.
Well, Conan Doyle would often say to Houdini, "You'd make a great medium. I think you're a medium." So I think he thought it was real. Yeah.
Right. Shayna.
I just want to echo a question that was raised in the chat, which is, what is the book for the exhibit called?
Oh, it's also called Conjuring the Spirit World. Same title.
And I'll be happy to I'm going to make a note of that, send a link to it out with my follow-up email.
Oh, Brian has it right there.
Oh, yep, there it is. Brian's holding it up. Yeah, it's a great book.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So, and if you go to the Peabody Essex Museum, it's the only place you can get a paperback edition of it. You have to get the hardcover without going there. All right. Thank you, Anna. That was incredible. Very, very, very well researched, and we are all impressed. So, and there is an article similar to this that will be in the next issue of Steel True Blade Straight, which will be coming out in December. And so just as an FYI, but wonderful, wonderful presentation as always. And just to wrap up here, let me just show you so in December, there we go. It actually working. I'll be talking that I always like doing something around the holidays. And so I have a new book that is associated with the Strand magazine called Sherlock Holmes Crimes for Christmas. It's an advent calendar of Sherlock Holmes adventures. And I'll talk a little about that. And I'll share a couple of the pieces with you all so you can get a taste of it. And I'll kind of talk about how it developed and why I chose the format I did for it. So that will be in December. And then, as always, we're looking for speakers for 2025. So if you're interested in giving a talk on pretty much anything in the Sherlockian or Doylean realm, email me, and I'd love to have you present. All right, everyone. Thank you.
Wait, Derek, I have a quick question, please.
Yes, please. Jump right in.
I guess I could do this after we're done here, but months ago, you thought you would be away in December, and I was supposed to lead the meeting next month. So you obviously are going to be here unless you're going to be doing a Jean Leckie Conan Doyle thing from afar. So you are going to be here.
I will, yes. And I was going to let you know that.
Thank you.
Yes. And in answer to Micah, yes, that should be correct. December 7th, right? That's the first Saturday in December. So yes, that's when we'll be there. Unless I looked at my calendar, it should work for me. So I'll let you, if there's any issues, I will let everybody know. But thank you all. And thank you, Margie, for asking. And take care, everyone. It's always.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent.
Bye-bye.
All right.